gospel recorded by St. Matthew. The gospel recorded by St. Matthew in the 15th chapter, verses 18 to 20. Gospel recorded by St. Matthew, the 15th chapter, verses 18 to 20. But what comes out of the mouth comes from the heart, and this defiles a man. For from the heart come evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, sexual immoralities, thefts, false testimonies, blasphemies. These are the things that defile a man, but eating with unwashed hands does not defile a man. But what comes out of the mouth comes from the heart, and this defiles a man. For from the heart come evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, sexual immoralities, thefts, false testimonies, blasphemies. These are the things that defile a man, but eating with unwashed hands do not defile a man. Let me begin by first explaining this passage from the perspective of the Pharisees. This passage begins in verse 1 where it says, "Then the Pharisees and scribes came from Jerusalem to Jesus and asked, 'Why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders, where they don't wash their hands when they eat?' This tradition arose out of the exile, when the temple was destroyed, being carried away into a foreign land and not having a temple where they could continue to practice the laws and sacrifices of Moses. The Pharisees developed a practice of ritual cleanliness whereby washing one's hands, washing one's dishes, and maintaining the dietary laws, one could be proclaimed righteous before God. Not only was this about being righteous before God, it was also about maintaining their Jewish identity. They were surrounded by people who were not like them. This was the situation while the Jews lived in exile in Babylon, and this is also the situation in Galilee, for the Jews there lived under a Roman occupation. Living under the authority of the Romans, maintaining their identity was important to them. So not only were the Pharisees concerned about righteousness before God, they were also concerned about their Jewish identity. This is how the practice started. But with most things of human invention, things start with good intentions, but often go awry. By the time of our scripture this morning, there was added to the law of Moses a set of human traditions. And often these traditions contradicted God's law. This is what Jesus says in verse 3. He answered them, "And why do you break God's commandment because of your tradition?" What Jesus references in the next few verses is the tradition of the Pharisees that causes the people to break the fifth commandment. The commandment is to honor one's mother and father. The commandment meant not only showing your parents respect, but in the latter stages of their lives, we were to take care of our parents. The Pharisees said that if one made a vow to donate their wealth to the temple, they could be relieved of the obligation to care for their parents. Jesus said in verse 6, "In this way, you have revoked God's word because of your tradition." Jesus calls them hypocrites and quotes to them the words of Isaiah 29. "These people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. They worship me in vain, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. Now, the disciples weren't used to hearing anybody talk to the Pharisees like that. They told Jesus that he had offended the Pharisees. And Jesus goes on to insult them, calling them blind guides who lead the blind, and both would fall into the ditch. But then Peter asked Jesus to explain what Jesus meant when he said, it's not what goes into the mouth that defiles a man, but what comes out of the mouth. This defiles a man. Jesus got to the core of the problem. Something that all the hand washing and the keeping of dietary laws could not address. What defiles a person is what is inside of a person. And what's inside of a person is sin. Washing your hands will not clean you of sin. Keeping laws of what you can and cannot eat will not clean you of sin. Tradition of the Pharisees of vowing to give your wealth to the temple will not clean you of sin. Sin is what comes out of a person. It comes from the inside. Amen. And unless something is done from the inside, nothing you can do on the outside will help. Yeah. The Pharisees have become stuck on dietary laws, believing that if you ate what was considered to be clean, then you would be clean. But Jesus says, don't you realize that whatever goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is eliminated? Now that may be somewhat crude, but it's true. Whatever you take into your mouth will come back out one way or another. What we take into our mouths is temporary. It will pass. So it's not what goes into the mouth that defiles us. What goes into the mouth will eventually pass. It's what comes out of the mouth that defiles us. For what comes out of the mouth comes from the heart. This is the real problem. Sin that is within one's heart. For from the heart come evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, sexual immorality, theft, false testimonies, blasphemies. These are the things that defile us. Now, sin is something you can't dress up. It has to be addressed. A sinner can dress up, but no matter how you dress him, he's still a sinner. This is why there can be so many sinners in church. We can wash on the outside and dress up real nice, but if there's still evil in our hearts, how we dress won't matter, because out of our lives will come the evil thoughts, adultery, immorality, lies, and all other forms of evil. Everything that comes out of our lives comes from our hearts. Sin causes a deformity of the heart. A heart which was created by God to love. First to love God and then to love each other, becomes deformed by sin and expresses all kinds of evils. The evil that is within our hearts cannot be dismissed. It has to be confronted and addressed. Some believe they've addressed the sin in their hearts by coming to church. But just because you come to church doesn't mean that you've addressed the sin in your heart. You might be here, but don't let the words of Isaiah apply to you. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Amen. Coming to church will not address sin. You have to allow the church to come into your heart. Yes. You have to give God your heart and let God work on it. Let God transform your heart day by day. And unless we allow God to transform our hearts, the sin and evil that is within us can never be addressed. You know, while we may be dismayed, while we may be disheartened, while we may even be angered by what we saw over the past 2 days in Charlottesville, we shouldn't be surprised. The truth is, as Jim Wallace calls it, racism is the original sin of this country. This country was founded in the sin of racism. And many in this country still suffer from this deformity of their hearts. The evil that we witness comes from the sin of racism that's within the heart. So it really doesn't matter what or how they dress on the outside. They don't have to wear sheets and hoods anymore. It doesn't matter how you dress on the outside. You can dress as lawyers and judges. You can dress as doctors and politicians. You can dress as police or professors. You can be deacons, trustees. You can be bishops or other members of the clergy. Doesn't matter how you dress on the outside. If the sin of racism is still on the inside, you'll continue to have Charlottesvilles all across this country. Many of these people are afraid of the loss of what they believe to be their identity, a loss of their heritage. They believe that there are too many people who are of a different heritage than they are and who are, by some measure, taking what belongs to them. So they're fighting to take back what they believe is theirs. This is a false belief and is directly the result of sin in their hearts. First of all, nothing belongs to them. The Bible says the earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord. And because the world and everything in it belongs to the Lord, we err in saying anything belongs to us. Anything we possess is only borrowed for a limited period of time. Second, because the world and all of us who inhabit it belongs to the Lord, we are called to share what God has created and not to possess it as our own. To do that, to attempt to possess it as our own, is idolatry. Because we've taken what belongs to God and have made it our own. We've exchanged the proper worship of God for the admiration of the world. This comes from the evil which is in our hearts. And don't be surprised if it's Charlottesville today. It may be Durham or Raleigh tomorrow. Because the sin of racism is pervasive in this country. Dr. King recognized this 50 years ago. He understood that we could change all the laws that we wanted. But until we changed the hearts, we would never eradicate the evil that is racism in this country. And you can't excuse the problem by saying that there's violence on both sides, as if there's some equivalency to what took place yesterday, as if everybody is somehow to blame. This is the typical way we excuse ourselves by blaming somebody else. Blaming somebody else is not the real issue. The real issue is the sin in your own heart. Because of the sin in your heart, what comes out of your life are all forms of evil. It's what comes out of a person that defiles them. Evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, sexual immoralities, thefts, false testimonies, lies, blasphemies, and yes, even racism. These things cannot be dressed up or explained away. They cannot be excused, nor can you change them by washing up on the outside. Until you deal with the malady of sin on the inside, you will never get to the real problem, which is in the heart. The only way to deal with sin is to repair the deformity of the heart. And the only way to repair the deformity of the heart is to turn to God. Hear what the prophet Joel says. Even now, this is the Lord's declaration. Turn to me with all your heart, with fasting, weeping, and mourning. The word of the Lord came to Joel as he told the people that their problem was in their hearts. The people had dressed themselves up real nice. They were observing all of the festivals. They were bringing all of the required offerings to the temple. They were even worshiping at the required times. And even though they were doing all of the right things, because their hearts were not right, God allowed another nation to destroy them. Job proclaimed that the day of the Lord was soon to appear, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and dense overcast, like the dawn spreading over the mountains. A great and strong people appears, such as never existed in the ages and will never again in all generations to come. Job said there was only one way to escape this day of devastation. Tear your hearts, not just your clothes, and return to the Lord your God. When Joel tells the people to tear their hearts and not just their clothes, tells us he's dealing with superficial people just like we are. Dealing with people who did symbolic things like tear off or to rip off their clothes and to sit in sackcloth and ashes so everyone could see how publicly sorry they were. But that was on the outside. And on the inside, they did nothing to change their lives. And they continued to commit the same sins over and over again. It was to these people that Joel said, tear your hearts, not just your clothes. Only by tearing our hearts can we begin to repair the deformity in our hearts that defiles us. Only by tearing our hearts can we begin to repair that which has defiled us. Only by tearing our hearts can we begin to restore the relationship with God. And then I'm not even correct in saying that we can restore our hearts. That we can repair our hearts, because only God can repair the deformity that is within our hearts. But by tearing our hearts, breaking them open by confessing to God that we are defiled sinners seeking God's grace, only then can we begin to allow God to repair us. Only grace can repair what sin has destroyed. Only by tearing our hearts can we begin to allow God to come into our hearts to repair them. Tear your hearts, not just your clothes, and return to the Lord your God. Amen.